Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you very much for joining today here with us to celebrate the first birthday of a baby journal. Um, well, as you already know, the first issue of Asia Pacific Journal of Evaluation was successfully issued. So we would like to celebrate this Memorial Day together here today. Well, today's moderator is me, Aki Yonehara. I am an associate editor of Asia Pacific Journal of Evaluation, or APEJE. And then before receiving the opening remarks, I would like to kindly remind you a general rule of webinar. Please kindly keep your microphone and video disabled during the seminar. And also for any question, comments, concerns, you can write down anytime in the chat box, particularly during the lecture. Your comments, questions are very much welcome. All right, now we are very lucky to have opening remarks from Dr. Soma de Silva. I think many of you know her very well. She is also an associate editor of APEJE. So thank you very much for Dr. Soma. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Prof. Aki. Let me warmly welcome everyone to this very happy event of the birth of the baby APJE, as Professor Aki mentioned. It is my very pleasant duty to share with you, by way of introductory remarks, some reflections on the journey of the Asia Pacific Evaluation Journal, APJE, up to this happy moment of its launch. APJE is the Asia Pacific Evaluation Association and SLEva's contribution to introduce a platform for communicating evaluation experience in the Asia Pacific region. At its launch itself, the APJE received its branding, Made in Asia. This very apt branding was given by none other than Michael Quinn Patton. With Patton's inspiring words, the journal took off under the able leadership of Professor Shyam. Responses for the call for papers exceeded expectations. We thank all authors. The reviewers gave their time and expertise voluntarily and willingly. Recognizing that evaluation often tends to be feared and ends as an end of project activity, the journal aimed to promote proper understanding and effective use of evaluation. Dr. Shyam aptly noted this situation in his editorial. I quote, "While many think of M&E as just a tool, it is actually a movement that is crucial in developing an evaluability mindset among the youth and communities." Once the articles were finalized, no time was lost in the preparations for publication. With the publishers' efficient collaboration, APJE's first issue became a reality. The advisory board played a catalytic role throughout the process, providing direction and placing emphasis on quality. The authors in this first issue address some critical issues. What makes an evaluation influential? Using technology to improve survey responses and to implement country program evaluations, and perspectives on India's M&E practices. Importantly and happily, in keeping with the spirit of the journal, young and emerging evaluators share their views. Turning to the future, a special edition of the journal is already underway. It is organized by the Antwerp University. Another special issue focusing on young and emerging evaluators is planned. The journal is committed to facilitating non-academic practitioners and young evaluators to publish their work. The journal editors and the advisory board look forward to bring out the second edition. Your continued engagement will sustain this momentum. Thank you for your presence and engagement in making evaluation deliver results for people. After all, evaluation is for that purpose. Thank you very much for your listening. Enjoy the evening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Soma. It's a great opening remarks, very encouraging. Thank you. And now we are very happy to have this video abstract. This first issue of APEA includes one keynote address and 4 research articles and 1 policy corner paper. And those great contributors are making very wonderful messages to us today. So please, moving on the video.
Greetings, I'm Michael Quinn Patton, and I'm honored to be part of the first volume of the Asia Pacific Journal of Evaluation. My article looks at challenges and opportunities for evaluation, with special emphasis on Made in Asia evaluation. I cover the competing global trends affecting Asia, the image of this century as the Asia century up against the Anthropocene's threat to humanity. Climate change, the pandemic, misinformation on a massive scale, which means dealing with new technologies like artificial intelligence, speaking truth to power from the journal's perspective and from the dynamics of global politics, decolonizing evaluation, making sustainability a universal criterion in evaluations given the climate emergency, but also making equity a universal criterion, connecting the local to the global, what's being called global, to place Asia-Pacific developments in a global context, acting with a sense of urgency because of these threats to humanity going forward, evaluating across silos and projects to transform systems, which means transforming evaluation and how we do what we do as well, and supporting the idea of unique contributions from Asia, what might be called Made in Asia evaluation. I congratulate the journal editors on this volume and urge you to read it thoughtfully.
All evaluations seek to exert influence. They change ideas or points of view. They can also be used as instruments to guide actions based on their findings. What makes for an influential evaluation? This is a difficult question to answer. But it's arguably easier for the evaluations of multilateral development banks, or MDBs, because they are designed to be influential. They have specific recommendations to which management must react. Does management agree with them? If so, how do they intend to carry out their action plans to address those recommendations? Our paper uses 7 evaluations from one such MDB, the Asian Development Bank's Independent Evaluation Department, as case studies to assess influence and identify contributory factors. Let me highlight 4 main factors, among others that are in the report. First, timing matters. Evaluations that were done to inform a strategic decision or organizational change were more influential than others. Secondly, clarity of how the report is written also matters. Crisply written, short, and message-driven reports were better received and were more influential. Third, the outreach and communications efforts of the team to address both internal and external stakeholders were clearly important in influential evaluations. And finally, external factors such as whether or not the topic was of global or regional interest.
I'm happy that our journal article is getting accepted at the Asia Pacific Journal of Evaluation. It is titled as "It's only a 5 minutes walk from here. Comparison of respondent travel distance perceptions in social surveys to alternative measures." Data on individual access to the public infrastructure and services are traditionally collected through self-reporting methods, but those methods are errorsome. Because of the issues with those methods, we have explored an alternative method to calculate distance from the respondent's location to the public infrastructure location using Google APIs, and we have discussed this in this paper.
Using the GPS data of respondents' enterprise location that we've collected through our in-person service and the Google API data on infrastructure facilities available in respondents' towns, we measure the time taken and distance for each respondent to reach the nearest infrastructure facilities by foot from the location of their enterprises. We compare the time taken and distance data that is collected from the Google API with the self-reported data on time and distance taken of the same respondents to understand the proportion of respondents who have underestimated, overestimated, accurately estimated, and rounded off the time taken and distance taken to the nearest infrastructure facilities. We further intend to understand the correlations between socio-demographic factors and misreporting of time taken and distance to reach the nearest infrastructure facility.
In our study, we found that 1 in 4 respondents accurately estimated the time taken, whereas majority of them overestimated. The results indicate that self-reported data on time taken and distance suffer frequently from inaccuracies and are subjected to rounding off biases too. Through our study, we are proposing a new methodology to accurately estimate the time taken and distance through Google API services. We hope, after reading our articles, more researchers will explore the use of Google API and leverage its wide range of application features to generate additional insights. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Suraj Jacob. Along with Rahul Mukhopadhyay, we have an article about critical questions for evaluation in the Indian context in the new issue of the journal. The article addresses two central questions. One is what makes for a good evaluation from a normative perspective, and we provide a broad overview using the large literature on the subject. The second question that the paper addresses is what are the actual evaluation practices in a specific context. We take the Indian context and look at the actual practices. Now, as regards the first question, we try to take a comprehensive evaluation approach normatively, looking at what constitutes good evaluation or best practices in the pre-design and design phases of a social intervention, in the implementation phase, as well as in the post-implementation impact phase of a social intervention. And here, by evaluation, we have the general idea of examining how a social intervention unfolds in society, including placing quote-unquote values on different aspects of the social intervention. We are also careful to address issues of method, use and value in the process of placing values on different aspects of an intervention. As regards the second question, we look at actual evaluation practices in the Indian context in various social interventions in India, and we conclude that there is a considerable amount of what we call a ritualization of practices, and this can be traced to issues of political ecology and broader governance practices within which evaluation can be situated. Thank you.
Namaste. Greetings from India. I am Yatin Diwakar, a PhD scholar at Sitara IIT Bombay and a co-author of a paper in this first issue of APJE, along with my supervisor, Professor Bakul Rao. Our paper titled Evolution of National Evaluation Systems in India elaborates how over the past 7 decades, initiatives for establishing national and state level M&E systems have been taken several times in India, and the ongoing efforts to build capacities and develop institutions for effective evaluations. It was observed that the instability due to changing leadership, changes in government, economic crisis, external pressures, etc., and policy flip-flops have rendered the efforts ineffective in the long run, reversing previous accomplishments at times. The paper contrasts the global ages of evaluation with proposed phases in India. It does a content analysis of all available annual reports of the erstwhile Planning Commission and its successor Niti Aayog to draw a timeline and highlight emerging similarities and the repetitive nature of events and activities. The research helps in learning from the past, creates context-based literature for a country in the Asia-Pacific region, and offers insights to build better systems in future. To institutionalize evaluations, parliamentary mandate via policy action and deeper integration into budget cycles is crucial. Thank you.
The title of this paper is Use of Geographic Information in a Country Program Evaluation. Since every site offers varying degrees of performance and achievement, deploying a geographic information system, or commonly known as GIS, for multiple site projects is deemed challenging. Currently, GIS is grossly underused in country program evaluations, which encompass numerous programs, locations, and thematic areas. GIS is a potential analytical tool for unpacking national programs, developing multiple degrees of inference, and substantiating evidence. GIS, as a data visualization and communication tool, presents the process and findings of an evaluation to multiple audiences in a more concise and analytical manner. This practice note explains how GIS was implemented in Cambodia's Independent Country Program Evaluation by the United Nations Development Program. It outlines the issues experienced when applying GIS for country program evaluations, how GIS may be incorporated into various phases of review, and how GIS can be used to infer and provide evidence for evaluation criteria of coherence and relevance. Thank you so much, and we welcome you to read the paper.
Thank you very much for all the contributors making a wonderful video message. And now, it's our great fortunate tonight. Dr. Shyam Singh, he is the chief editor of APEJE, is kindly making a wonderful lecture for, particularly for the practitioners, to learn how to write academic paper. And I hope this lecture is going to motivate you to become a contributor of this journal. Thank you very much, Dr. Shyam. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Aki. Thank you very much. And I'm really happy to be here, to be talking about how to write an academic manuscript, and particularly, for practitioners, as they sometimes struggle that how we should be, whether we are able to write it, whether what should be done, what steps should be taken, what should be avoided. I think there are a lot of questions that more often academicians, not only academicians, definitely for practitioners, they face. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first talk about what Asia Pacific Journal of Evaluation is thinking in terms of including practitioners' perspective, what we are doing, what we have done, what we have plans. And maybe I spend 5 minutes, and then I'll move towards some tips for practitioners, how to get through the evaluation process, the review process, and how to really make a manuscript which can be amenable for the readers and for the reviewers and for the editors. I must thank our advisory board, my colleagues in the editorial board, who have encouraged the whole team that we should be exploring more avenues to invite, to encourage practitioners, policymakers, and implementers to write papers for this journal. And one of the idea is that it's not for academicians only for them to write. It's also for those who really see the challenges they face in terms of when they implement any intervention, be it the developing intervention, be it monitoring or any evaluation. So what we have done is that we have dedicated a space for the, for these practitioners in the journal, and we really invite them to write for the journal, and we will be really happy to help them. In fact, one of the plans that we have discussed in the advisory board is to help practitioners how to write a good manuscript. So if they submit, maybe at some point of time, we need to develop a system where we are helping them systematically in developing their manuscript. So we will definitely be moving towards that direction. Another innovation I would say that we have tried doing is the video abstract, which you have just watched. And I hope that we will continue with that, where these clips are uploaded alongside with the manuscript on the website, journal's website. So I think a lot we have to do. We have come together, we have decided, and I'm sure we will achieve very soon with all your help. When it comes to academic writing, as we understand, as we have got trained in our training during PhD, it was always, we were told that this is a space for few. Not everybody can enter, not everybody can write a paper, not everybody can get an accepted manuscript. I think that's a mindset that we have come along with, and that's where, APJE, we are still trying to relax this mindset. It's not a space for few. Definitely we need certain writing skills. We definitely need certain protocols, etiquettes, but it does not mean that, it's there, the platform is available only for the exclusive set of people. We have to make sure that the writing that comes through, we are able to provide that platform to everyone, not only academicians. Definitely they are welcome, and we do welcome articles, and we are publishing, but we would also like to encourage the practitioners. And when we say practitioners, for us, they are policymakers, they are implementers, they are, working in funding agencies, with NGOs, non-government organizations, everybody, we call them practitioners. So we want this journal to be one of the platform where they can come and actually they can express their viewpoint. But definitely we need a minimum quality, we need a minimum framework that they need to follow, they need to be following. And I'll try and make sure, I will also be putting some of the mind frame that we use when we evaluate or when we review the paper as editorial group. So I think I'll be kind of telling the tips which are very secret on our side, but if it helps the practitioners, I think nothing wrong. That when we read a paper, when we review a paper, what are the basic and major thing that we see when we send it for the further review? If they don't match, those paper and manuscript don't match those standards, we reject them at the desk review level. So I think I will also be giving those tips which we use, making them public. Of course, they are not secret, but there are some fundamentals rules that we apply when we review. Our perspective, the journal's perspective, is that yes, as I've been saying, that they should publish, and we are committed to explore these innovations. And we have a belief, and I think I can speak for even our advisory board along with the editorial team, is that there are innovations which can be told in the best manner by practitioners rather than who go and collect the data and come back and write a report. So I think the doers has to really become the storytellers. They need to be telling us what is happening. They need to be come out as writers. And that's where the APJ's contribution, I think, in recent future is immense. And we would like to promote that. We encourage practitioners to write their own stories there. And that's where we would like to, help them. The spaces that we have in the journal, we have 3 spots. One is a practice note, where basically we would like the practitioners to capture the local and contextual innovations. Believe me, there is a dearth of these innovations in the field of monitoring and evaluation. We do have, we do have nice reports. We do have nice and scientific, data-driven, evidence-based papers published in multiple journals. But as far as my understanding goes, we do not have many local and contextual innovations, which with some changes, with some modification can be presented and can be applied elsewhere as well. So I think we would like to offer that opportunity to practitioners to come along and write with us. Here, where we want these practitioners, particularly exploring the contextual innovations or local innovations, we necessarily do not focus on methodology, which is quite, people can say that very data-driven, although everything is data, by the way, whether it's a quant or qual, but not very, mathematical or one-sided, or where a lot of practitioners feel helpless. I think if one has ability to narrate what is happening and how you can capture it, probably is enough for a practice note. So we do look at if you have that ability to narrate, can you narrate your story in a way that it actually tells others what is happening in your own context, in your local situation. There's a policy corner that we would like to have, have policy makers to write about what they have done and what kind of practices they have, what kind of legal and policy solutions they have adopted. And the third is the capacity building, the space, and which is, again, is very innovative. I'm not sure I have seen elsewhere. Maybe I'm sure there are a couple of examples, other journals are doing it, but maybe we're among them as like first mover, where we would like to have a teaching cases. If somebody has been teaching and there is a case, they can explain it, they can present in such a way that others can get benefited. They can have a demonstrated examples of a many capacity building with their outcomes. What happened when the capacity building exercises were done? If they have done some follow-up study, probably would be really happy to publish them. And of course, if there are interviews with in-depth knowledge, with in-depth insight of in the M&E sector, and interviews with sector experts, we would like to publish them as well. So these are three platforms where we would be inviting practitioners, implementers, policymakers to really contribute. Now let me come to the basic rules of publishing. I should not say rules, but they are very flexible, but I think there are some fundamental requirements that we do consider or do look for in our reviews. So I'll be really telling those fundamental requirements, and I'm sure because writing is just not a very defined space. People do innovate when they write. People do present the things in a very different ways, and that is why there are millions of authors write papers, following their own ways. So there's some specification you see, there's some exclusivity you see in their contribution. So everybody has its own style. But I think what I'm going to discuss and impress upon, there are fundamental basic rules that as editor, we look for in those manuscripts. See, for any contribution, mostly policy corners or for practice note, these are, I think, and these are globally, it's not something new. These are the section that a manuscript should have. Of course, one is abstract, there has to be an intro, and then data and methods. Mostly this is for, as I said, it's a relaxed category for, whatever the category that I have told about, the policy corner, practice note, and evaluation capacity building corner. But if somebody has used primary data, that's yes, then this section should be there. We can have a literature review, not necessarily the separate section. Can be integrated with introduction. In the fifth one, the presentation of case. Even some lit review can also be presented in summary section, which I'll be telling you when we come to that section. So literature review section is also optional. So we can have a 3 and 4 optional. Depends on what kind of work you are trying to write and present. If it's a heavily primary data driven, we may need, or rather we do need the data and method section separately. And if it's just a policy corner or a practice note, not necessarily you have a separate section. If you have, it's good. If you do not have, that there is no negative, as long as you have given sufficient review, presented in introduction section, maybe in the 5th section, and then maybe in the last section. So these are major section that we try to look for in the writing, mostly in the policy notes and in the policy corner and the practice notes. I will discuss one by one each of them. What kind of, those fundamental rules that we try and apply, what kind of, etiquette or protocol that we try finding whether the authors are complied with or not. So let me start with the first, which is abstract. Length is, it has to be shorter. And every abstract that is written, it must present the key ideas that you are trying to put forward, or innovations in outcomes. What do you expect out of this paper? What are you expecting that, okay, these are the things that the people should know, or these are the things that I'm going to highlight for the knowledge of maybe people from M&E community or policymakers or anyone, any reader. You must indicate, what are you going to discuss in the manuscript? And I think one of the problems that more often we just reject the paper because authors are not able to tell specifically exactly what they are trying to do in the manuscript, in the abstract. I think you must be able to tell what are your key ideas, what you're going to present, what you're going to hear, what would be the outcomes. It must be there in the abstract, because if it is not there, then we think that the author is not able to put forward his or her ideas. Also tell why. Why do you think that these ideas are the innovative ideas? Why do you think that anybody should subscribe to your outcomes or innovations that you are trying to tell? Maybe 1 or 2 sentences justifying and why it is important. You should not quote any literature here, but you can easily tell the readers or the reviewers that my ideas are noble because of 1, 2, 3 things. So I think we also, and if you have described why it is important to really read this paper, to accept this, to publish this, I think it really makes your case very strong if you have given the valid reasons there. So these are the things that we look for in the abstract. It should be short enough, whatever the journal's requirement is. Make sure that you have presented key ideas, innovations, outcomes. Make sure that you are able to convey to the readers that what are you going to do in the manuscript. It must be there in the abstract. Many times people do not have time to read through the manuscript. So they, and it's so natural, they look for abstract and see what is there, what you have written. Should I go inside the manuscript? Should I really read it? Or I can know what is there in the paper, so I can decide whether I want to read it or not. So I think it's absolutely important that we are able to present the abstract in such a way that we don't lose the essence of the paper, and we also justify why your ideas are so important. This is abstract. In terms of introduction, this is another important section. Well, all sections are important in any manuscript, but I mean, if it's also based on the reviewers and the editors. Suppose if you lack something in your abstract, okay, we look for the first paragraph of your manuscript. If you're not able to explain there, most of the time, particularly in a rigorous review process, those manuscripts are less welcomed or not welcomed. First thing, abstract should be able to tell what exactly you're trying to do. And if at all there's a lacuna in the abstract, and if editor is more, or reviewer in the mood to that, okay, there are, great ideas being presented, but if there is some lacuna, okay, let's give the space. Your first paragraph or first couple of paragraphs, introduction section must be able to tell the readers, what are you presenting, okay? In introduction section, you must present a problem statement. Not necessarily it's a problem, because problem statement it's just a language. There can be an issue, there can be new framework, there can be a good story you want to share, but you have to really, make a case why, whatever you are saying, why it is a problem, for example, right? Why one should pay attention to it? What is the relevance? What would be the consequence if the people ignore it? What they're going to miss it? Okay. And one can use the evidence from other contexts and cases to make your point, because in other cases, when they were, the similar ideas which you were presenting were followed, so the consequences were positive, or they didn't follow and therefore the consequences were negative. I think one can use the evidence to tell that whatever the problem statement that I'm putting forward is noble and worth considering. So whenever you write a problem statement that in this practice note or in this policy corner, I'm going to highlight this problem, okay, this local issue, this innovation, this is the responsibility of the author to really establish why that is a problem or why that is a noble idea, okay, why one should pay attention to it. So discuss the relevance and consequences, and why, why one should believe you, and therefore you use the evidence from other contexts and prove your point. When you are doing it, make sure that you use, and if you're using, you can use, of course, when you're using evidence, you are using secondary data. When you use the secondary data, make sure you are using authentic and well-known sources. I have seen in many manuscripts, people use their internal data or internal reports, which we call a gray literature. I'm not disrespecting, or I'm not discounting those literature. They, of course, they are probably useful in their own ways. But when you are writing a paper, make sure that they are well-known sources, they are authentic, everybody understands the authenticity, okay? And then you can use the data, depends on what you want to present, whether your case at the regional level or national, international, because that helps us, editors and the reviewers, understand what you're trying to say and why your ideas are valid. So I think introduction section must be, crafted very carefully, particularly what kind of problem statement you are trying to put forward. That was the second section. Dr. Aki, I would need that how much time I have, so that accordingly I can move fast or slow. I'm not sure.
You have, let's see,
12 minutes, 10 minutes?
10 minutes. You have 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's go to the data and method section, which is third. Now, as I said, it's a relax for three categories that I have been talking about, meaning practice note, policy corner, and capacity building section. So not necessarily somebody has to write this, but if you have dealt with, if you have used primary data, yes, we expect that you write this because you have used primary data. Well, in primary data, numbers matter. Of course, everybody understands the numbers matter. So you have to give, maybe in a brief, because practice note or policy corners, we say that please write in 3,000 words. So definitely you cannot write much. So maybe in one small paragraph, you tell, that the number of interviews or surveys you might have done, what is the method of data collection, how did you select the respondents, whether there was some bias or unbiased ways of selecting, whether there is, random or non-random ways of sampling. So one can really write this brief. But then what people lack, and that's where they fail. And I think that was the trick I was saying, that more often we editors and reviewers use it. So I'm opening up the secret that when you mention this, that these were the number of respondents, this was the data collection method, more often, mostly in a qualitative study, people do ignore the process, the importance of process. It is very important to tell your story around the method. How did you do it? How did you, had you sample frame, for example, okay? How you went along, who collected the data, who were the respondent, right? How difficult it was to find the interviewees or respondent. What happened when one or two got dropped out, you couldn't get in their homes or in their wherever, then you have to, compensate for those numbers. What happened more often that authors do miss this story. Please understand, if your primary data is qualitative, your story of method and data, gives comfort to the reviewer and editor that the issues of validity and reliability are not there in the paper. Otherwise, more often we keep guessing how valid and how reliable your analysis or your data sources are. So it is very important, irrespective of quantitative or qualitative data, that if in one paragraph you have written the numbers, another 2 paragraphs you can take safely and write the story. I mean, one can easily write what was the method when you selected 100 people to interview and 10 dropped out. Just people migrated, they were not there, they went somewhere else. What was your strategy to fill that number? Okay, when you went to the village, what happened? Okay, how you convince the in the responders? Sometimes they ask very difficult questions to you. Okay, if it is a focus group discussion, even worse. You have to control it. How you control it? What kind of discussion happened? What kind of the people around the discussion were there and what they influencing the discussion, etc. And therefore the mindset of the people who are participating in the discussion. It is very important, and more often we have seen that people miss the story part of the data and method. They are very good, we know, in telling the numbers, but what I recommend, if you really want to get your paper through, and if you want very positive reviews from the editor at the desk review level and the later the reviewers, tell the story, what problems you faced and how you dealt with the problem. Now this is with the primary data. Same continues if you don't use primary data and if you use your own experience, because a lot of policymakers and practitioners write their own experience because they have a very rich experience working in the sector for several years, right? For several interventions. So not necessarily they have a one intervention to talk about. Probably they have a galaxy of interventions to talk about. Now, in that case, in my opinion, that is even more tougher than you have a primary data. More often people think that the qualitative data is easier. You write your own experience. No, I think this is my personal opinion. And I have seen also when we discuss this among the colleagues and whether in the country or outside, it is more difficult to really establish the validity and reliability of your claims if it is qualitative story. In this case, please narrate your experiences, processes more carefully, because you are the actor, you are alone, you are trying to give the experience of tons of experience which you may have, tens of the intervention you are part of. Make sure that you take a route called narration. Okay, you narrate your processes and your experience. When you narrate, there are 2 things that are very important: sequencing and consequences. Narration, if you ask any story writer, they will say that all the events and ideas should emerge, should come in a sequential form. Excuse me, just give me a second. Okay, so that the readers are able to connect what happens when, and if something happens later, why this happens. There's always a, it's just a mindset that we are trained from our childhood. So make sure that we maintain that sequentiality. And then every time we narrate the process, we also talk about the consequences. Consequences may not be the final outcome, but we do engage in telling the processes what happened. Okay, so when these processes were followed, what were the immediate consequences that we felt? And that might lead to another sequencing or another reality or other event. When you use your own experience or your sector experience, make sure that your narration is strong. You are able to write very simple English, no jargons, but in a very systematic manner, meaning make sure that the sequentiality is not lost and you are able to discuss the consequence of every event that you discuss. Narration, it should consist of what, that is content, and how, what happened. Okay. Now, there's one more thing that is very important in narration. Narration cannot happen. You cannot tell a story if you do not have characters and faces and names. Well, as per your need, you can have a pseudonym or real name. That depends on you. Based on, if you cannot use real name, you use pseudonym, but narration needs characters and story. So if it's a qualitative story that you're trying to present, it's a qualitative database work, make sure that you have some characters. That characters could be institutions, character could be, I don't know, APEA, IDRC, anybody, right? Not necessarily you have people there. There could be organizations. There could be stakeholders group. but there needs to be characters. They need to have some name. One can choose whether you want to give real name or not. And last, very important thing, when you're telling the story, when you're narrating, when you're bringing your experience, when you are convincing other people that what I'm trying to tell you is correct, you know, your linguistic abilities are very important. So either you are a good writer. If you're not a good writer, make sure you get a good copy editor who can actually help you to write. My point is, again, not complex English, not an academic English, not the English that can, you know, earn you a Nobel, you know, prize. No, I'm saying, when I say that linguistic ability, how effectively you are able to connect with the reader. I mean, that has to be, so how fluently you can write, how easily you can, you know, convey your ideas. Fourth is the literature review. It is not, again, I said, it is not necessary for the policy or the practice notes. But yes, one can always, you know, review some literature just to find out whatever you are doing, whether it is unique or not. to if there are other work that you know, support what you are trying to do, and that gives you validation, verification, and also you can show the contribution that what you're doing, nobody has done it. Okay. Literature review also talks about the gaps. So maybe there are other work who have not addressed what exactly you are trying to do. Then maybe they might have done some other issues, maybe in the same sector, but then this is something that new you are trying to propose. So even through literature review, you also highlight the gaps and therefore the need of your work. I'm sorry, my throat is not helping me. Don't include the literature for the sake of review. Now, this more often we reject paper because of this. People do include literature just because they have to give some literature. They have to show something to the reviewers or editor that, see, I have reviewed 100 papers. It doesn't matter. You have only 10, you have only 50 or 20. As long as it is relevant and you know, it is directly connected to your work, do not use excessive literature if it is not needed. I mean, this is the one thing which we very carefully see, the literature that you have given, included, whether it is relevant or not. Focus is on recent and contemporary literature, because as long as you are not giving a historical perspective, you're not touching upon any theory and framework, which is very old. I'm not giving any percentage or share that 30% old or 70% new and contemporary, but make sure you have enough you know, material coming out of the recent and contemporary literature, because that helps the reader to connect what is happening around and what you are saying, whether it makes sense or not. But yes, you can also have old ones, 30, 40 years old literature. If it is a theoretical contribution, it helps you to make your argument. Very important, the fifth, and that is very important, presentation of case. Case means your own point of view. This is main body of the manuscript. Do not tell what is quite usual. More often, whatever that you try and write the papers, you know, it is there already in the newspaper. So why one should read your papers? Every editor, every journal team, every reviewer needs something unique. I cannot tell you the quantity or quality or extent, but something unique, which either rarely known or not known, or even if known, but if you just, you know, top up a solution over this, then things become quite, you know, easier for the community, for the society. So tell something which is a bit of unique. Do not describe the story, and that's another problem. When this is your main paper, this is after your literature review, this is your main section of the paper. Do not describe the story that is merely descriptive. It should be explanatory. Writing a good narration, a good writing is the combination of description and explanation. Description is what you see and you just start writing, oh, that happens there, etc. Explanation is you go beyond what you see, okay, and try to, you know, try to tell what exactly is happening, why it is happening, whatever is happening. Set up the context clearly, okay. It will help you to really establish the case that you are trying to put forward. See, this is what, now this is the complex point of the whole section. Present very clearly in detail the community interaction and the complexities that were involved and how the same were addressed or solved or, you know, interacted with. Why I'm saying this? Because there are always layers of reality. Okay, whatever you can see from your own eyes, probably you are present there, may not be the reality. Maybe just go a step behind, and you find the actors, the way they were behaving in a community or in a setup, they were behaving because something else which you can't see. So more of that is why description is sometimes, if you keep describing what happened, sometimes is really boring, and it doesn't give any new thing, and therefore the editors will say, okay, that paper is not good. The person keeps on describing it. Well, description should be there, but try and explain the description that you are giving. What is the reality? How many layers are there? Go back, ask, whatever I'm seeing or describing, why this is happening. There are some processes happening elsewhere, and because of these things are, that I'm able to observe. So there are layers of reality. We see what we observe at once may not be the reality. So we are more often and this happens in some of those policy, writings, that we are tempted to present a big picture. So killer facts, so X factor, but then probably we forget that the context is embedded with so many interactions and relations in the community, where we forget those embeddedness, those layers of relations and reality. So I might be sounding a bit philosophical, but I think when you start questioning what you're seeing and what you're writing in a paper, start pay attention or pay some attempt to go beyond what you are seeing. I'm sure you will understand the embeddedness of the nature of the society, and you can easily come up with few newer factors why something is happening, whatever is happening. Keep negotiating with the context. This is another point in this section which people miss. You can bring a lot of perspective from other. Dr. Aki, give me just 1 minute. I'll just very briefly summarize. You can keep negotiating with the context, because you can bring things from outside, from your own experience, from your own intervention, but then how those ideas are interacting with the context, what kind of solutions you are providing. So every new idea, every new reality, put it in the context where you are presenting. If I'm presenting a case, a district in Gujarat, which has its own social norms, own reality, own caste relations, I keep on discussing what is happening in Orissa and West Bengal and other states, but I also keep interacting with the context in Gujarat. What would happen if these things happen in this district? So it is very important that you keep negotiating with the context and try to explain why something is happening and provide adequate evidence. And that's where that you can also bring in the literature review or similar papers and data just to support. Also keep reminder the readers, that how it is important for them to know whatever you're telling. This is very important. That is where we keep readers in touch with your story. Okay, you need to put those those X factor in between, where you engage with the readers that whatever the story I'm telling you, it's so important for you to know, because it has several important dimensions. And the last is summary and finding. When you write your conclusion or finding, think first, why have you written, whatever the number of words, I have just written 3,000 words, why have you written this? What is the use? Okay, believe me, if you write a paper, write a manuscript, keep it somewhere for 10 days, re-look at it, you will laugh at yourself. Oh, this is I have written? Because you can easily say, oh, this is the mistake. No, I should not have written this. I should not have written this. I think when you write a summary and conclusion, just think, why have you written whatever you have written, 3,000, 4,000, 6,000 words? Okay, what are the benefits? For whom I'm doing it? Why one should read my paper? Believe me, if you get the answers, if you write in a summary, you are coming up with a nice implication why one should pay attention to your paper. Sometimes it looks easy, sometimes it's difficult though. Okay, but if you just really pay some attention to who's going to use this my policy corner note. Why is India going to use, or Sri Lanka can get benefited because they have a similar system or a different system? Think little bit, and probably you are able to give a nice implication for your paper. And when you do that, that is how you convert your findings into conclusion. More often in the papers we find there are findings, and what they conclude along with the implications, there is no connection. And if you just answer the question, what are the benefits for whom and why? Okay, I think you are able to tell, or you are able to convert your findings into conclusion and nicely. Here also in conclusion section, you can give some literature to support, to validate your finding. People do that. Don't give many literature. Maybe 2 or 3 studies are enough to really validate what you are trying to tell. And lastly, be honest and forthcoming in telling what you couldn't do. Believe me, this is a service that you do for even your fellow readers or academicians or anybody, that if you just highlight that, oh, I couldn't do these 3 things in my article, that might be some suggestion for others to take up, or that may be a future writing for you. So make sure that in a 1 or 2 lines or one small paragraph, you are able to tell what you couldn't do. This is what I had to offer. I'm sorry, I think I have gone a couple of minutes more than what I was expected. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shyam. Actually, we received a lot of comments requiring your slides because your slides is very important, very instructive. So thank you very much. Okay, now I know everybody has a lot of questions to Dr. Shyam, but I'm sorry for this due to time limitation. We need to skip the question and answer session, but hopefully that our production team is going to share Dr. Shyam's slides, so that I think his instruction and the information would help you a lot to write a paper. Okay, so now it's time to close this seminar. Time flies very quickly. So we would like to welcome Dr. Candice Morkel. She is an advisory board member of APEJE for the closing remarks. Thank you very much, Candice. Floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Professor Aki. And we first of all just pass a hearty congratulations to the journal editorial team on behalf of the advisory board. I think what stands out for us as the board and for myself as an individual is just the speed and the commitment with which the editorial team undertook this assignment. I also have positions, or have had positions, in the African Evaluation Association and the South African M&E Association. And we have had the African Journal of Evaluation for about 10 years now, and we know how hard it is to get the journal going. It took us much longer than you did. So congratulations on what you've done. And we really hope that it's just going to go from strength to strength. I think also one other point that stood out for us as the board is the positive collaboration with partners, SLEvA, APEA, EvalYouth Sri Lanka, Center for Evaluation, and others. And I think that speaks volumes about what can be done when you have the right partnerships. I think one of the things we spoke about in the early days as the board, together with the editorial team, was the passion and the vision to reach a wider audience beyond just evaluators. And I do believe that what Professor Shyam just spoke to us about now is a wonderful way of actually reaching that wider audience, and indeed getting a wider audience to write. And I absolutely loved your presentation, Dr. Shyam. I think it's really, really excellent. That's the kind of thing that we need to be going for in our regional journals. And then just lastly, this journal, I think, signals a catalyst for knowledge production and sharing in your region, in the Asia Pacific region. And I think it really can have many, many spin-offs. So, you know, some of these pieces of work, I think, probably can be used in curriculum, in teaching, in testing of models, in innovations, and all of that, I think, has already been mentioned by Dr. Shyam as well. So all in all, a hearty congratulations, and thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this process. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Aki.
Sorry for my trouble. Thank you very much, Dr. Candice, the great closing remarks. And now, finally, we would like to ask Dr. Asela. He is the president of APEA, Board of Thanks for today. Over to you, Dr. Asela.
Thank you, Professor Aki. And my vote of thanks, goes beyond today's webinar actually, because I'm really happy about the Asia Pacific Evaluation Journal. This is, this makes history in the region, having the first evaluation journal. So I think we must thank the advisory board, editorial board, including the chief editor, Dr. Professor Shyam Singh, the authors for submitting wonderful papers, as well as our team, the APEA Secretariat team, including Madhuka, who was working on the journal together with all these members. So I would say that this is a wonderful achievement, as all the other speakers mentioned, and important for the region as well as the evaluation field in the region. So it marks a great achievement. Also for today, I think we must also thank all the speakers and also our chief editor, Professor Shyam Singh, for making this wonderful presentation. I think it will be helpful for the authors in future as well. And also let me thank Professor Aki for moderation, as well as other speakers, and again, partners, SLEvA, APEA, and other partners putting this webinar together, and our team who worked hard to make the webinar a success. Thank you very much. Also, thank you very much for the participants as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Asela. So now we are going to close this today's webinar. Again, thank you very much for everybody to witness this historical moment. And then we are very happy to welcome this baby journal. And also, I think that Dr. Shyam's presentation and lecture told us that each of us can be a parent of this baby journal as a contributor. So, wishing our best to grow our baby journal for the future. I would like to close the session today. And very finally, I would like to introduce you this call for papers information for the second issue. So we are very much welcome your contribution. And here is the last information for you, the next webinar. On the Wednesday 15th next month, a very interesting webinar is coming. So please don't miss this opportunity as well. Finally, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.